How are you doing, everyone? Mr. Howie here, and today we're talking about Mr. Unga Bunga himself, Arataki Itto. Starting off with our boy's name, however, we're going to do this a little different and start with his first name, because it's rather humorous in my opinion. His first name of Itto, the first part written like this, or Ichi, is just the number 1. Not too much there. However, the second part of his name written like this is Big Dipper. So his first name could be One Big Dipper. However, the word Itto has another translation of its own, which is a measure of volume, which is equal to about 18 liters. So his first name, Itto, technically means 18 liters. His name is 18 liters. I don't know what you do about that. Sometimes you're like, this guy's name means 18 liters. He just moves on with his life and just hopes he can forget. In any case, moving on to our guy's last name of Arataki, the first part, Ara, written like this, means rough, wild, or rude. However, the second part, Taki, written like this, means waterfall or rapids. So as a whole, Arataki could mean rough waterfall or wild rapids. Personally, I would go with wild rapids due to the nature of his personality being kind of wild and unpredictable. But that's my personal opinion. What would you go with? Moving on to what inspired Mr. Arataki Itto, he actually happens to be the 3rd yokai we've talked about following after Yaemiko and Kujo-Sara. And he is a yokai known as an Oni, which translated usually refers to a demon, ogre, and in some cases an orc or troll, but more commonly in Japanese folklore is demons and or ogres. And ogres are the ones we'll be kind of focusing on for the most part in regards to Mr. Itto. Now, Oni, or ogres in this case, are commonly shown to have very fierce and evil natures, which are commonly shown as them being very murderous and or cannibalistic. However, despite these aspects of showing them to be quite evil, they do have some more complexity to them that makes it so you can't completely write them off as purely evil. However, diving into that would require an entirely different video focused purely on the deeper complexities of the Oni, so we won't be quite going there. In any case, now in terms of appearance, Oni are often depicted as being red, blue, yellow, black, or even sometimes white in color, as well as being depicted wearing a loincloth made from tiger pelt and wielding a kanbo, or iron club. Now there is a relatively popular character from the anime and manga series Urusei Yatsura. Her name is Lum, who seems to be loosely based on potentially yellow Oni, as depicted here. This is purely based off of the color of her clothing and of her horns. Now, the reason I brought her up is because she kind of shows some of the aesthetics of Oni, but to a more waifu degree, of course. She has, instead of the tiger pelt loincloth, a tiger pelt bikini, and even tiger pelt shoes, which is a general depiction of what Oni seem to wear. However, sadly, she does not wield an iron club, which is a bit sad. However, the more commonly referenced Oni in manga and anime media are the red and blue Oni, which we will dive into a bit more in just a minute, because they have a lot more relevance to our boy Itto and his story. As I mentioned, red and blue Oni are probably not only the most commonly depicted versions of Oni in anime and manga, but also have a story which is commonly pulled from for many of the times that they show up in said medias. And that story in Japanese folklore is called The Red Oni Who Cried. So, the basic rundown of the Red Oni Who Cried is that the Red Oni really wants to become friends with humanity and hang out with them, walk around the town, but Onis are not well looked upon by humanity. In fact, they're relatively looked at with disdain and fear. But his close friend the Blue Oni devises a plot to help the Red Oni get into humanity's good graces and become their friends. But this requires the Blue Oni to kind of take a hit and make himself look kind of bad to humanity and have his friend the Red Oni chase him off and kind of become like the hero who rescued them from the Oni who was terrorizing them. However, even though this plan ends up being a success, the Blue Oni inevitably ends up leaving the Red Oni behind because he does not want his association with him to hurt the Red Oni's newly earned reputation that he gained with humanity. So the Blue Oni takes it upon himself to leave, and leaves his friend with a letter that inevitably ends up making the Red Oni cry, because despite becoming friends with humanity and gaining success in that aspect, his best and closest friend ends up having to leave and separate himself. Thus, that is kind of where the conflict between Blue and Red Oni kind of come from. Genshin itself actually references the Red Oni Who Cried story in Itto's character story, Rise Up Golden Soul, which the first act is strongly based off of this story and is kind of the basis for the conflict between the Crimson and Blue Oni within this universe. Now, this story of the Red Oni Who Cried is often brought up in other media, such as Dragon Ball, as well as ReZero. However, in ReZero, it is a bit more strongly utilized. This is due to the fact that it is brought up in a conversation between Subaru and Ram right after Subaru finishes reading a book of folk tales. And thus, once Ram comes in, she kind of asks him what he came across. He thus then proceeds to tell her about the story of the Red Oni Who Cried. By the end of the story, she states to Subaru that he should not tell Rem about this story. Now, I believe this is because the story probably hits a bit too close to home and is a bit too relevant to Rem and Ram's situation in their past, and that Rem might not be able to quite handle how the story of the Red Oni Who Cries ends. Alright, we've got one more area to cover, the voice actors. But before that, let me remind you that if you're enjoying this video, please leave a like, comment down below if you have something to share, and subscribe for more videos like these. Alright, let's get to the voice actors. Starting off with our English voice actor, he seems to be pretty well known within the anime community, and that is Max Middleman. He is known for being the voices of characters such as Kira Yamato from the Gundam Seed series, King from Seven Deadly Sins, Ritsu from Mob Psycho 100. He is also Plague from Miraculous Ladybug, as well as Red 13 from Final Fantasy VII Remake. Moving on to our Japanese voice actor, who is probably one of the biggest people we've talked about to date, and that is Takanori Nishikawa. Now, some of you are really hyped hearing that name, and others are probably like, who is Takanori Nishikawa? Well, stay tuned, and I will be sure to let you know. However, let's move on to some of his voice roles. He is Sakai from Sengoku Basara. He is also the voice of Miguel and Heine from the Gundam Seed series, Orochi no Ren from Rurouni Kenshin, as well as Lang Wu Yao from Thunderbolt Fantasy. However, I think his stage name is what he's most well known for, which is TM Revolution. Fun fact, everything I've mentioned that he voiced in, he also did an opening and or ending for said series. He is also known for doing openings for series such as Soul Eater, as well as Eden Zero, and many, many more. Thanks for joining me for our talk about our Unga Bunga buddy, Arataki Itto. I look forward to seeing you guys again for my next video. Speaking of which, here's a hint at who's next. Did you figure it out? If so, leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time. Mr. Howery,